She grew up where Sabbath morning was not just a day, it was an event. You pressed your best clothes the night before. You were up before the sun. Not because anyone made you, because something in you knew that Jesus was going to show up, and you did not want to be late. The singing started before you sat down. The tambourine was not optional, and nobody checked the clock. Because when Jesus shows up, you do not rush him out. That was her church. That was her Sabbath morning. That was where she met Jesus for the first time. And every time after that, she remembers the feeling of walking through those doors on Sabbath morning, when the singing was already happening, before the service started, before the pastor said a word. The women in their hats, the men in their Sunday best, the children sitting still for exactly 5 minutes before the Spirit moved and nobody could sit still anymore. She remembers her grandmother with the tambourine. That was not a suggestion, it was a calling, and she answered it every single Sabbath morning with her whole body, because Jesus was in the room and Jesus deserved everything she had. Hey! Her praise was never quiet, not because she was loud, because Jesus was worth every tambourine, every lifted hand, every song sung past noon, when the food was waiting at home and nobody cared, because Jesus was still in the room. And you do not leave when Jesus is still in the room. Hey! Island girl, praise. Hands all the way up. Island girl, praise. Feet moving like the Spirit said move. Island girl, praise. Born on a Sabbath morning in a church that never checked the clock. Island girl, praise. Jesus showed up every single week, and she learned early that a God like that deserves a praise like this. Full body, full voice, full tambourine. Island girl praise, and she is never toning it down for anyone. She remembers the songs, the ones that came from the grandmothers, who learned them from their grandmothers. Songs that had survived everything the island survived. She remembers the feeling of the whole church moving together, not choreographed, not rehearsed, just the Spirit moving through a room full of people who had come expecting Jesus and found him every single Sabbath without fail, because Jesus never missed a Sabbath morning in that church. Not one. Hey! Her praise was never quiet, not because she was loud, because Jesus was worth every tambourine, every lifted hand, every song sung past noon, when the food was waiting at home and nobody cared, because Jesus was still in the room. And you do not leave when Jesus is still in the room. Hey! Island girl praise. Hands all the way up. Island girl praise. Feet moving like the Spirit said move. Girl praise. Born on a Sabbath morning in a church that never checked the clock. Island girl praise. Jesus showed up every single week, and she learned early that a God like that deserves a praise like this. Full body, full voice, full tambourine. Island girl praise, and she is never toning it down for anyone. Jesus was in the singing. Island girl praise. Jesus was in the tambourine. Island girl praise. Jesus was in the grandmother's hat. Island girl praise. Jesus was in the songs that survived everything. Island girl praise. Jesus was in the Sabbath morning. Island girl praise. Jesus was in the room past noon. Island girl. And he is still in the room. Island girl praise. And he still deserves everything she has. Island girl praise. She ever lived was Jesus showing up for her, and she is still showing up for him. She brought her Sabbath morning praise into every room she ever entered, and Jesus was in every single room. The same Jesus from Sabbath morning, still showing up, still worthy, still worth every tambourine she has left in where she met Jesus. That is where she learned that a God who shows up every Sabbath without fail deserves a praise.
It never tones down,
Never quiets down
never sits down
until Jesus says done.
Island girl praise,
Island girl praise.
and she is still praising.
She still feels it every Sabbath morning. That feeling of walking through the doors, when the singing is already happening, when the tambourine is already going, when Jesus is already in the room, waiting, the way he always was on every Sabbath morning of her whole life. That is her praise.
It has an accent,
It has a rhythm,
it has a whole body in it.
and it belongs to Jesus.
Every tambourine,
Every lifted hand,
every song sung past noon.
it was all